morning. Let's do a little mini lecture on eating. And let's think first about hunger. How does the body tell us that we're hungry? We've all experienced a growling stomach, I assume. So Cannon and Washburn are the two weirdos, psychologists, who decided that the best thing to do to figure out how the stomach tells us that we're hungry is to insert a balloon into the stomach. So Washburn himself swallowed a special balloon attached to a device designed to monitor stomach contractions. You know, that kind of aching, gnawing feeling when you're very, very hungry, and the growling that you experience. They thought that that was stomach contractions, and they wondered if that was actually telling us that we're hungry. Seems obvious that it is, but we had to do the experiment. So he swallowed the balloon down his throat. There's the balloon in the stomach, and it's attached to a device, and it's going to record the stomach contractions. And then at the same time, he has a response key. And that is, he taps that when he experiences hunger. And you can see that the stomach growls at the same time that he feels hungry. So by comparing the record of key presses against the balloon measurements, they showed that stomach contractions do accompany feelings of hunger. But hunger is more than just stomach contractions, and it's not obvious that the contractions cause the feeling of hunger or that the feeling of hunger causes the contractions. So let's think about it a little bit more. So body chemistry. And hunger. Certainly the stomach plays a role, but other factors play important roles too. In fact, people who have had their stomachs surgically removed feel just as full or hungry as people who do have their stomachs. So clearly that's not the only thing going on. One important factor in our body chemistry is blood glucose levels. So when the glucose levels dip, the stomach and the liver are going to send signals to the brain, and the brain is going to initiate a sense of hunger that says, feed me. Hormones control hunger too. So in the blood, of course, we have glucose, which is what we call that colloquially blood sugar. When it dips, it makes us feel hungry. The pancreas releases insulin to control glucose levels in the blood, and so again, that drop in glucose signals hunger. The stomach secretes the hormone ghrelin, which makes us feel hungry. Here's how I remember this. Ghrelin sounds like growlin', and so the stomach secretes ghrelin, which sounds like growlin', which means that we're hungry. And then leptin is released from fat cells and suppresses hunger. So the more body fat you have, the more leptin you have, and the more is being released. Now that should, logically, it sounds like more fat cells, more leptin, more full, right? Suppresses hunger. But that's typically not what happens with people who are overweight. Instead, what happens is you've got all this leptin and the body says, oh no, that's too much. And so it will down-regulate it. And so we can, in fact, become leptin resistant. I always worry when I see movie stars, for example, who have suddenly put on a lot of weight for a role, because we can break our metabolism and cause ourselves to have our hormone levels off. So blood, the glucose dips and makes us feel hungry. The pancreas is regulating the glucose, and again, that low glucose makes us hungry. Ghrelin is released by the stomach, which makes us hungry, and then leptin is released from fat cells and suppresses hunger. Okay, but hunger is very much in the brain. The hypothalamus is the brain structure that most influences eating. In fact, if you damage the hypothalamus, that can dramatically change eating behavior and change how much you weigh. Of course, the gustatory cortex is in the frontal lobe up here, and seeing tasty food can make the limbic system light up. So if you looked at these yummy crispy fries and thought I think that looks like bacon, and you thought, and you had a little flash of like, ooh, that was probably dopamine in the limbic system lighting up and causing you to kind of want that. Now, some people seem to be very sensitive to these kinds of visual cues and tend to have their reward systems really light up. And other people are kind of like, whatever. I'll never forget, I was watching I watched a clip, I think, of Oprah. I don't think I was watching. Maybe I was watching the show. I don't know. It was a long time ago. And Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt were on the show. And an audience member was allowed to ask a question. And she says, so Brad and Angelina, I really love you both. And I'm a chef, and I would love to cook for you anything that you would like. What's your favorite meal? And I'm telling you, these two had no idea. No idea. They're like, They had no idea what to say. They had no idea what their favorite food was. Now, they're both, slim and healthy. I would imagine that their brains do not light up like a Christmas tree in response to pictures and offers of food. However, if you are a person who is overweight and they put you in a brain scan, and they show you a picture of an ice cream sundae with brownies or pizza or something like that, then the brain will light up like a Christmas tree. These are people who are feeling very rewarded by those visual images. And so you can see that some people are very drawn to food and some people are less so. And so that's going to have to do with the limbic system. Now, hunger is not entirely in the brain. We often, and it's not innate. Much of our eating behaviors are, in fact, learned. So our social activities are coordinated around food. Our holidays are coordinated around food. Celebrations, work events often revolve around food. We often eat even if we're not hungry because there's food there. Or we eat too fast, which doesn't allow satiety signals to set in. Satiety is our feeling of fullness. I'm constantly telling my son to stop eating so fast. He eats his dinner in like 5 or 10 minutes, and I tell him your satiety signals are not going to kick in until about 20 minutes after you start eating. So slow it down, bud. People will tend to match their food intake with those around them. That is huge. That is a massive cultural thing. So in Japan, for example, in Okinawa, Japan, this is one of the longest lived cultures. They often will live to be 100 years old, very, very healthy. They have a lot of rules around food that govern how much you eat and how much you take. And so these are people who live in a culture where people are deliberately limiting how much they eat. They have a little saying called Hari Hachi Bu, which says, eat till you're 80% full. And if everybody's doing that and you're matching your food intake with other people, do you see how very few people are overweight in Okinawa, or at least that used to be the case. Women will eat more if they're with other women than they will with men. So obviously this is women wanting to eat less to be more sexually attractive to the men, to present themselves in the most possible light, and then with other women they're willing to let their hair down. Okay, a couple of interesting studies about factors influencing decisions to begin eating or stop eating. So here's a study. Moviegoers were given popcorn. And so some were given a medium, and some were given a large, and some were given fresh popcorn, and some were given 14-day-old popcorn. So you might get medium fresh popcorn, or medium 14-day-old popcorn. Or you might get large fresh, or large 14-day-old. And participants ate 33% more when given the large size, even if it was stale and soggy. They still ate more. So it didn't matter what the food was nearly as much. What mattered was what size they were given. If they were given a large size, they thought that that's what they were supposed to eat, even if it didn't even taste very good. Here's another study. Tubes of chips, think Pringles, and in some of them, every 7th chip was dyed red, but in some of them, there were no dyed chips. And participants who had a red chips, every 7th one, ate 50% less. It broke the cycle of mindless eating because it called attention. They're like, oh, here's this thing. Okay. And so those are a couple of really interesting studies about factors involving eating. So some people will say to you, if you're trying to lose weight, eat off of a smaller plate. That actually is a good thing. You don't have to buy prepared bags of chips. You should be eating chips if you're trying to lose weight anyway. But you can just make your own, but breaking that cycle of mindless eating. Get out. This is actually one of the things that the Okinawans do. They don't put all the food on the table so that you can keep snitching more and more and having seconds. They serve at the counter, put the food away, and then they begin eating. That breaks that cycle of mindless eating. Okay. Have you ever experienced being hangry? I have. I used to get hangry quite a bit. So judges' rulings in cases are harsher when they are hungry. Israeli researchers reported that more parole requests were granted by judges at the beginning of the day, presumably that means after they just had breakfast, or after a snack, as opposed to in the afternoon and the end of the day when they'd worked all day and they were starting to get hungry. One of the authors suggested that the judges could be grumpy from hunger or suffering from mental fatigue after a day of stressful decision making. So hangriness is, in fact, a thing. That just means your blood sugar is too low. Okay. What can you do about low blood sugar if you're getting kind of hangry sorts of issues? I would say eat less carb and eat more protein and fat. That'll even out your blood sugar levels. All right. That was just a short little thing on eating, and I'll see you in the next chapter for emotion.